Hello friends, my name's TheRealEmile and welcome back to some more Forza Top Gear laps. Today's theme is old versus new. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking some old cars from, various different time periods in the past and putting them against the new equivalents of today. Now, people who like old cars will tell you old cars are better because they weigh less, they handle better, and are usually more fun. People who like modern cars will tell you, well, modern cars do handle very well, and well, if you look at Nürburgring lap times and so on, modern cars appear to be quicker around tracks, as well as they are also quicker at accelerating and in a straight line due to modern technology. So it really is a bit of a minefield. So which one really is best? Well, I grabbed a couple of cars and threw them around our Top Gear track. The first to go around was the 1987 Ferrari F40. Now, this car's 477 horsepower and weighs 2,981 pounds. If you say supercar to anyone, chances are they will probably say back to you Ferrari F40. The F40 is one of the most recognisable cars in the world, as well as being one of, in my opinion, the first true supercars and one of the first road cars to ever crack 200 miles an hour. Now, the F40 is from the 80s, and supercars in the 80s didn't handle particularly well. If you look at stuff like the Lamborghini Countach and the Diablo, those cars were big, heavy, and well, they had huge heavy clutches and bad gearboxes for town use and so on and so forth. The F40 though handles like really, really good, as in this car, in my opinion, drives better than most of the modern supercars. The F40 is actually a really, really nice car to drive, and I didn't have any problems with it at all. It's a very well-rounded car, and as far as, if you wanted to go racing with something straight from stock, the F40 isn't exactly a bad choice. Sure, it doesn't have the straight-line speed of some of its more modern competitors, but the handling is sublime in this car. It's really nice to drive. Yeah, good car overall. Its modern counterpart is the 2012 Ferrari F12. It has 729 horsepower and weighs 3,594 pounds. Now, on the surface, these two cars aren't exactly similar. The F12 is front-engine and it's a GT car compared to the mid-engine supercar-cariness of the Ferrari F40. However, PI-wise, these cars are pretty close. I believe the F40 is about 13 PI over the F12, but still, This car has 729 horsepower, which sounds like an awful lot, and indeed it is actually. So you'd expect this car to handle pretty atrociously. But you'd be surprised, the F12 is actually really decent to drive. I've driven the 458 Italia, and I have to say this handles better than the 458 Italia, at least in my opinion. It weighs a bit more, which means it's not as twitchy as the 458, and as far as straight line speed goes, this car's pretty good. You can't take quite the same amount of corner speed as you could in the F40, just because obviously it's a bit heavier, and yeah, it does feel a little less reliable than the F40, but still the F12 is a pretty good car to drive. As far as modern supercars go, yeah, this one is pretty damn decent. Very much like the Corvette ZR1, that car. Next up we have the rough CTR Yellowbird. This has 469 horsepower and weighs 2,661 pounds. Now, the Yellowbird, a lot of people say when they see rough, oh, you just got rough because you can't, get the Porsche name brand because of the whole EA deal. But roughs are a bit more interesting than just rip-off Porsches. Rough actually tunes these things. And back in the 1980s, if you bought a Porsche 911, you could take it to rough, and they would then upgrade it. The result would be the Yellowbird. This car can do 230 miles an hour. Yeah, that's, the Ferrari F40 was the fastest stock road car at the time, and that did 200. This can do 230. Yeah. The big issue with the CTR Yellowbird, however, is its rear-engined rear drive like a standard 911, which means you do get a lot of tail happiness because all the weight's in the rear. And all the weight being in the rear does make another catastrophic issue, which you're about to see now. This car has front-end lift. And by front-end lift, I'm not talking like the GT3 4-litre, which just had a bit of front-end lift that felt a little bit weird from time to time. No, this car's front wheels will genuinely lift off the ground at over 140 miles an hour. very, very scary car to drive. Its modern counterpart is the Rough RT12S. It has 676 horsepower. I didn't quite realise it was that much. And weighs 3,395 pounds. 676 horsepower is an awful lot. That's more than a Ferrari 458 Italia, a McLaren MP412C. You know, that's more than a 599 GTO even, I believe, which was the most powerful Ferrari at the time. Yeah, the Rough is very, very powerful, and it's very, very quick in a straight line. And, well, it's a lot more modern than the Yellowbird, which means, you know, obviously it doesn't have the 80s suspension and brakes and so on, so it's a little bit better to drive in that respect. It doesn't front-end lift as much as the Yellowbird does, and it definitely doesn't lift the wheels off the ground, at least from what I could see. No, the biggest problem with the RT is that it has atrocious amounts of oversteer. If you're not careful, this thing will just bite. You know, it's not the nicest thing to drive. Yeah, that was very scary through there. These two Roughs are very, very scary cars. I wouldn't recommend them for racing, but certainly if you want to have some fun and scare yourself silly, I certainly recommend giving the two Roughs a go. Now for something completely different. This is the 1939 Auto Union Type D race car. Now usually we don't have race cars on the track, and for good reason. They have race tyres and loads of downforce and so on. However, as you can see, 485 horsepower out of this car, and that's because this is an old F1 car, I believe. Now, you know, cars from 1930 didn't go exactly quick, should we say, but this one did. This car can actually do 230 miles an hour, which is insane, from a 1930s car. And this isn't just the only Auto Union that did 230. They made some super slippery aerodynamic thing as well, which did like 239, I believe. Yeah, these cars were insanely quick. The huge problem with them, though, is while it does do 230 miles an hour and accelerates in less than 4 seconds to 60, these cars still have the technology from the 30s. This car, for example, runs drum brakes, and the braking on it is absolutely atrociously bad. The brakes are horrendous. The handling, however, isn't quite as bad as you'd think it would be. Honestly, the Yellowbird is a much scarier car to drive. Even the modern Rough is probably scarier than this thing. It's not bad. It really isn't that bad. Sure, it'll slide because there isn't any downforce whatsoever in it. And like I said, you do have to watch out for the brakes, but as far as a fun car to drive around from time to time, the Auto Union's pretty damn good. Its modern counterpart, or well, not really a counterpart, is the 2010 Audi TT RS. This has 335 horsepower and weighs 3,294 pounds. Now the TT RS was a bit of a weird choice. I was sort of looking for Audis which were around the same PI as the Auto Union. The S3 sedan would have probably been a bit of a better sort of fairer test, but you know, I've got a few plans for that, so I decided to use the TTRS. I do actually like the second gen TTRS. It's a pretty cool car. It's a lot better than the first generation TT because I just hate that thing. Now this is the complete opposite of the Auto Union. While the Auto Union has insane speed but not particularly good handling, this car doesn't particularly have anything insane about it. I mean, the power's fairly normal for sports cars, if a bit low. It's got four-wheel drive, which means through the corners there's no oversteer or anything. There is a bit of understeer in this car, but that's about the only really negative thing I can say. This is a very, almost average car to drive. I wouldn't call it boring, but it's not the most exciting thing you can drive. But that being said, the TTRS was a pretty nice car to drive around here. And yeah, in case you're wondering, I believe the TTRS is about 20 PI more than the Auto Union. The final car we have today is a 1999 Mitsubishi Lancia Evo 6 with 280 horsepower and it weighs 2,822 pounds. I believe this is actually lighter than the Auto Union. Anyway, now the Lancia Evo has been round before. The Evo 10 went round. And I was kind of curious to see, you know, if the Evo 6 would be any quicker. To be honest with you, I was kind of expecting the Evo 6 to beat the 10. The Evo 6 is a bit higher on the PI scale. And to be honest with you, the Lancia Evo 10 didn't really set a particularly blistering time round. The Evo 6 weighs a bit less, and to be honest with you, actually, I believe it's about £500 heavier, the Evo 10. And it only has 25 horsepower compared to, it only has 25 horsepower over on the Evo 6, which means, yeah, I wasn't expecting the Evo 10 to win this one. Now, the Evo 6 is a fantastic car. It has got a bit of a wallowy suspension from stock, but if you put race suspension on this thing, there's honestly no better, sort of cost-effective car. I guess that's the best way I can describe it. On Forza 4 and Horizon, this was the go-to car if you wanted to do a cheap car challenge. And, well, on Forza 5 it does cost a lot more, but it's still a really decent car to drive and to go around with, and it's a decent value for money. Anyway, on to the times, and the Ferrari F40 beat the F12. The Ferrari F40 did a 1:17.184. The Ferrari F12 Berlinetta did a 1:17.955. They're two very quick times, though. I mean, that beats a Scuderia, the F40, by 1.5 seconds, and it's only 1.5 seconds off an Enzo. That's really, really good. The roughs, well, the RT12 won that battle with a 1:18.122, which is 0.6 of a second quicker than a Ferrari 430 Scuderia. And the Yellowbird did a 1:18.843. Rest assured, that was on the final lap. Those cars were getting about 1:19s, 1:20s, and then on the final lap it sort of busted out. Honestly, it does say the RT12 is faster than the 430 Scuderia, but for the most part it's just not. The car just is not very well composed. So as far as racing in those cars, I don't recommend it. But if you want to drive them around for a bit of fun, I recommend it. The Yellowbird is very, very scary, and it will keep you on your toes. So yeah, give those cars a try. On to the Audi battle, and the Audi TTRS won that. 123.937 for the TTRS. The Auto Union, though, got a 125.14, which is not bad. That's quicker than a Shelby GT500, BMW Z8, Nissan Skyline i34, and that car's like 70 years older than almost all of those cars. The Evo 6, unsurprisingly, beat the Evo 10. I wasn't expecting it to beat it by a whole second, but it did. Like I've just put there, the Evo 10 we used was an FQ300 model. Yeah, the Evo 6 is probably the best out of them two cars, to be honest with you. It didn't really put much of a fight on. So there you go, 2-2 to both. So old versus new battles continue on, I guess. It really depends on the car. Anyway, I want to thank you all very much for watching. Next week we'll probably do American cars or British cars or something like that. So leave your suggestion for cars in the comment section below. And until next time, farewell.